Hi, I'm Albert Meyer, the president of Bastiat Capital Money Managers in Plano, Texas. On November the 20th, 2008, the Wall Street Journal highlighted that the top CEOs in the financial and home building sectors received $4.9 billion in compensation. That is $195 million per CEO, and that was during the period 2003 and 2007. Every time a report like this comes out, everybody gets excited about executive compensation. The first suggestion is always that the government must take care of the problem. I don't think so. During the Carter administration, the government said, let's disallow all cash compensation in excess of $1 million, unless it's performance-based. Well, corporate America says, if you're going to limit cash compensation, we will use stock-based compensation. And this gave birth to stock options. It gave it a tremendous boost, and since that time, corporations have been able to deduct trillions of dollars in cash compensation. So the government's attempt to limit executive compensation just didn't work. Others say, well, vote proxies and complain and protest these egregious compensation packages. Well, at Bastiat Capital, we studied the proxies, and when we find egregious and excessive compensation, we vote with our money. We just don't invest in them. Others suggest that maybe we should outsource corporate governance to the Norwegians. Now that's a good idea, because in Norway, the government runs a 15% budget surplus. And they take that money, put it in a sovereign wealth fund, and they reinvest it for future generations in Norwegian companies. But they exclude companies that use stock-based compensation, because they maintain that stock options are akin to a criminal activity. Let's just use two quick examples to illustrate the problem we have, and I'm not even going to mention names of the companies because it's just too pervasive and it would be unjust to single out two companies. But there's one company that had a $37 stock price in 1998. That price got run down to below $2 by 2009, which was the time of the crash, when shareholders were panic-stricken. Corporate America said, wonderful, what an opportunity to issue options. The CEO, who already had over 8 million options and also 800,000 in restricted stock, received another 5 million options with a strike of just below $2. So if the stock were to go back to $15 a share, which actually happened by April 2011, but still well below the $37 price in 1998, the CEO would pick up $65 million in compensation. And that is the cost, the cash cost to the company if they were to buy back the stock at that point in time to mop up the dilution. $2 strike price paid by the executive, $15 is what the CEO would be able to cash out. So that discount is the actual tax deduction. But the real egregious thing is that in the financial statements of the corporation, an expense of $5 million was deducted, because the expense is calculated by using the Black-Scholes model. And that's an important point, because even though the CEO stands to pick up anything from 30 million to 65 million, or maybe even more, the value of that option grant was fixed at $1 a share, or $1 an option, which is 5 million. And when you look at these executive compensation surveys, they would include only the 5 million, not the 30 or 65 million. Another company that had virtually flat growth for 10 years, negative EPS growth, negative dividend per share growth, ran the stock from $57 in 2000 down to $5 in 2009. Just an opportunity that the company couldn't pass by. So they granted 9 executives 24.4 million options priced at about $8 a share, which means if the stock goes back to $25, which is still way below the 57 in 2000, each executive would pick up $46 million in option gains. Again, the difference between the market price at date of exercise and the strike price, and the cost to the corporation if they were to buy back the stock to mop up the dilution. Again, the expense was much lower, the expense recognized in the income statement and the expense that shows up in the compensation surveys. So I have a suggestion on how to at least make it more transparent for shareholders and to make it less of an incentive for corporations to use options rather than cash. Let's just look at Countrywide's CEO who picked up $470 million. He exercised options. The difference between the market price and the strike price gave him $470 million. That was deducted for tax purposes. It's important to note that that $470 million did not come from Countrywide's cash coffers. They were negative at the cash from operation line. It came from the luckless shareholders who bought Countrywide's stock from the CEO. And I would contend, and it might be controversial, but I'd contend that a big part of the $470 million came out of the retirement accounts of hard-working Americans who thought they were providing for their retirement. It goes into a 401k, it goes into an index fund. An index fund has to buy the stock. So it goes in the index fund, they buy Countrywide, maybe against the manager's wishes, but he has no choice. And there we have a massive wealth transfer from middle-class America to the corporate elite. So this is how you solve the problem. Keep in mind that if an executive buys stock at $30 but only pays $5 for it, there's a $25 gain for the executive. There's a $25 cost for the corporation if they were to buy back the stock, which they do. If they have the money, they do it. That's why we have such huge stock buybacks. The whole purpose is to mop up the dilution. Now that mopping up dilution cost, the cash flow, is shown in the financing section of the cash flow statement. I contend if you're merely mopping up the dilution, the cash outflow should be shown in the operating section of the cash flow statement. So if you issue, if you buy back 12 million shares, but you've issued 10 million to the executives and the employees, the cash cost of buying back 10 million should be shown in the operating section. If you do that, shareholders will understand that the company isn't half as profitable as it might appear at first, because the mopping up cost is just compensation through the back door. And then they could change the tax code. First of all, take away the tax deduction equal to the discount, the $470 million that Countrywide got. Take that away because it's not a cash cost, it's just a notional cost. But I know that that won't be acceptable. So I'm willing to say allow a tax deduction equal to the amount that companies disclose in the cash flow from operations section of the cash flow statement. So that amount which the company acknowledges is the actual cost of mopping up the dilution. Show that as a tax deduction. I believe that will take away the incentive to use stock options. It would take away the obfuscation that's associated with stock options and make things much more transparent for shareholders. If FASB says you can't determine when you buy back stock, whether you buy back stock that might have been issued at IPO or might have been issued to the executive, I just say for inventory you can use LIFO, FIFO. You can just make the assumption that all stock buybacks always go first to mop up dilution. And so that's my suggestion as an alternative on how to deal with stock-based compensation. Thank you.